There's a thing they don't put in any training manual, and it's this. The whole job comes down to a half second you spend 20 years waiting for and hope to God never arrives. 20 years I'd stood on that gate. 20 years of nothing, and I mean that as the highest praise because nothing happening is the entire point of us. Rain, heat, tourists, dares. A man once tried to put a traffic cone on my head. Through all of it you hold, you're a statue, you give nothing. And then one bright morning, in the space of a single half-second, I stopped being a statue. Completely. Without thought, without decision, the way you'd snatch a child back from a road. Because a child was about to be hurt, a little girl. And there was exactly one person close enough, fast enough, and facing the right way to get between her and it. Me. Let me tell you about the half-second, and the 20 years that were really only ever practice for it. It was a public morning at Holloway, the old royal seat in the heart of Dunmer's capital. Late spring, warm, the city in a good mood. The forecourt gates were open and the crowd was the easy kind, families, day trippers, a steady cheerful press of them along the railings. School holidays, so a lot of children, a lot of pushchairs, a lot of ice cream already melting at 10 in the morning. That holiday hum in the air. Somebody's radio. Pigeons working the crowd for dropped crumbs. It was a small ceremonial occasion that day. Nothing huge. A minor royal engagement, a member of the family arriving, a brief walkabout along a roped section by the gates, the kind of thing where they come out and greet the public for 20 minutes before going in. The crowd loves it. They press to the ropes, hoping for a wave, a word, a handshake. And the family that day had brought one of the children, Princess Niamh, 6 years old. She was a delight, by all accounts sunny, friendly, not shy of the crowds the way some of them are. And that morning, holding a grown-up's hand along the rope line, beaming at people, she was exactly the sort of small, bright thing a crowd melts for. Phones up everywhere. Oh, look at her. That warm collective coo a crowd makes at a happy child. I was on the post nearest the end of the rope line, eyes front. Watching the way you do, not the royals. You don't watch them. You watch the crowd, you watch the faces. You watch for the one face that isn't right. And about 10 minutes in, I found it. He was toward the back of the press at the ropes, and he was wrong in every way a person can be wrong in a crowd. You learn to read it. A happy crowd has a certain shape, everyone facing the same way, leaning the same way, that loose, easy attention all pointed at the same bright thing. And in among all that sameness, now and then, there's someone who doesn't fit the shape, who's facing a fraction wrong, whose attention is on something other than what everyone else is looking at, whose stillness or whose movement runs against the grain of the crowd. This man ran against the grain. He wasn't watching the princess the way the crowd watched her, with that open, delighted coo. He was watching her the way a thing watches another thing, fixed, flat. And he was working forward, not drifting, the way a crowd drifts, but pushing steadily with purpose, through the press toward the front of the rope, toward the open stretch where the little girl was making her way along greeting people. And his hands. I couldn't see his hands. They were down in front of him, hidden by the bodies of the crowd, and that a man pushing forward with purpose, eyes locked on a child, hands you can't see, that is every alarm there is all at once. I didn't have proof. I had a shape that was wrong and a cold certainty and about, as it turned out, 4 seconds. I started moving before I'd consciously decided to. That's the thing about the half-second when it comes. It doesn't feel like a choice. 20 years of training don't make you faster at deciding. They make you not have to decide at all. The body goes and the thinking catches up after. I came off my post. I was already moving down the inside of the rope line, fast, toward the open stretch where the child was calling it in as I went. The words coming out clipped and automatic. Thread at the ropes, male moving forward, get the principal back, get the child back. But I knew, even as I said it, that the protection officers were on the wrong side. A beat too far, that the geometry of it had put me, the guard, the statue, the scenery, as the one body in the right place at the right moment. The man broke from the crowd. He came over the rope, or through it, a lunging, ugly, fast movement, all his purpose uncoiling at once. And he came at the open ground where the little girl stood, and the crowd's coo turned in an instant into a scream. That awful flip, hundreds of happy people becoming hundreds of terrified ones in a single shared heartbeat. And the little girl, 6 years old, beaming a half-second before, froze, the way they do, the way prey does, just stopped, wide-eyed, rooted as the thing came at her. And there was the half-second, mine, the one I'd waited 20 years for and prayed would never come. I took it. And that's where I have to leave the first part. Because what happened in that half-second, what 20 years of being a statue had actually been for, was the thing that the title of all this is really about. I got there. That's all I'll say for now. The geometry that had put me in the wrong place for 20 years of boredom put me in exactly the right place for the one moment it counted, and I closed the distance, and I got my body where it needed to be, between the child and the threat. What I did then, fast, hard, decisive, the thing they train into you for exactly this and pray you never use, ended it. Stopped it cold. The little girl was not hurt. I need you to know that now before the rest, because I couldn't bear to leave you fearing it through the next part the way the crowd feared it in that scream. She was not hurt. A guard got there first. That's the whole point of the guard. That's what the statue is for. But there's more to it than the half-second. There's who the man was and what drove him, which was sadder and stranger than the monster the crowd saw. There's what it cost me, after, because you don't unleash 20 years of held-back force in half a second and just walk back to your post unchanged. And there's the little girl, and what she did weeks later, that turned the worst half-second of my life into the thing I'm proudest of. The statue moved, and a child got to grow up. I'll tell you what the half-second was actually like from the inside, because it isn't what people imagine. People imagine it's fast and loud and full of thought. It's the opposite. It goes slow and it goes quiet and there's no thought in it at all. The crowd's scream dropped away to almost nothing. The bright morning narrowed down to one corridor of air between the man and the child, and I was already in it, already moving down that corridor, and the only thing in my whole mind, if you can call it mind, was the geometry. Distance. Angle. Where my body had to be. Get there. Get between. Nothing else existed. I got between. I won't give you a blow-by-blow, because honestly there isn't one. It was too fast for me to have a clean memory of it, just fragments. I reached the open ground a half-stride ahead of him. I put myself in the line. My whole body, the full mass of me, dropped square into the space between the lunging man and the frozen little girl. I took the impact of him on myself, turned it, and used everything those 20 years had drilled into me to put him down, hard, fast, decisively. The controlled violence they train into you for exactly this and pray to God you never have to use. It was over in seconds. He was on the ground and pinned before the protection officers, sprinting now, even reached us. And the child was behind me, untouched. I'd felt her there, felt the small shape of her against the backs of my legs in the half-second before I'd moved her clear, the same as another child had once gripped my trouser leg at another gate in another story, and she was not hurt. Not a scratch. The thing had come for her and it had got me instead, got a wall of red and a trained body, and never reached her at all. That's the whole of the job right there. Everything else is standing still and waiting. The job is the wall. The job is the thing gets me, not the child. The crowd's scream had turned again by then, into that ragged roaring relief a crowd makes when the worst doesn't happen. People surging back, pulling children close, some crying, some cheering, a confusion of it. Officers everywhere. The little girl swept up and away, back into safe hands, gone inside within seconds, which is exactly right. You get the principle clear first, always, before anything else. And I knelt there on the forecourt stone with a man pinned under me and my heart going like a hammer, and the morning slowly coming back up to full volume around me, the color and the noise pouring back in, and I started only then to shake. Because that's the other thing they don't tell you. The half-second has no fear in it, there's no room, the body's too busy. The fear comes after. It comes flooding in the moment it's over. All the fear you didn't have time to feel, all at once, and you kneel there shaking like a leaf while everyone calls you calm and steady and a hero. And inside you're a man who's just understood, a half-second too late to feel it in time, how close it was. How close she'd come. How a half-stride the other way, a fraction slower, an angle wrong, and this would be a very different morning, and a very different country by nightfall. I'd got there, but I'd got there by half a stride, and the half stride is the thing that wakes you at night after, not the bit you did right, the narrowness of it. Now the man. I have to tell you about the man, because the crowd saw a monster, and he wasn't quite that, and the truth of it is sadder and harder than a monster would have been. He wasn't, it turned out, what everyone in that screaming crowd assumed. He wasn't a cold professional, wasn't part of some plot, wasn't the calculating threat the rifle and plot stories are made of. He was a deeply, badly unwell man. Mentally ill, properly, seriously ill, in the grip of something that had untethered him from reality entirely. He'd built in the broken machinery of his mind some elaborate delusion that involved the family, involved that child, involved a conviction that he had to do something. And the illness had marched him, over weeks I gathered, toward that rope line on that bright morning with a terrible broken purpose that made complete sense inside his sickness and none at all outside it. I don't say that to excuse it. What he was about to do to a 6-year-old was the same regardless of why, and my job in that half-second was the same regardless of why. You don't pause to diagnose the man coming at the child, you stop him, and you sort the why out after. But the after matters and the why matters, because it changes what the whole thing was. It wasn't a battle between a hero and a villain. It was a tragedy with a child at the center of it. A very sick man who, healthy, would never have come within a mile of harming anyone, driven by an illness nobody had caught or treated in time to that rope and that lunge. He needed help badly, and had needed it long before that morning, and the system that should have caught him hadn't, and so it had come down, in the end, to a guard in a half-second on a forecourt. He wasn't killed, by the way. I know the way these stories get told, deadly response and all that. The response was decisive, and it was hard, and it was exactly as much force as it took to put him down and stop him and no more, because that too is the training. You end the threat. You don't execute the man. He was restrained and taken away, and the place he ended up was a secure hospital, not a prison, because that was the truth of what he was. Not evil. Ill, very ill. That sat strangely with me after, stranger than I expected. Because for 20 years you brace, somewhere in the back of your mind, for the half-second to come from a bad man, a villain, someone you can hate clean. And when it finally came, the man at the center of it turned out to be one of the most pitiable human beings I've ever had my hands on, a soul so broken by illness that he'd been turned into a weapon by his own mind, against a child, against his own buried better self. I'd stopped him. I'd had to. I'd do it again without a half-second's hesitation. And I also couldn't hate him once I knew, and that's a hard thing to hold both of at once. I had to stop you, and God help you, you poor wretched man. The little girl had needed protecting from him, and he had needed protecting too from himself, from his illness, from a world that had let him get that ill before anyone reached him. Both were true. They're both still true. The half-second sorted out the first one. The second one was nobody's to sort out on a forecourt, and it haunts me a little that we only ever meet people like him at the very worst, most dangerous end of a long road of help that should have come and didn't. As for me, I didn't just walk back to my post. You can't. People think you can. They think the discipline means you put a thing like that down and pick your stillness back up and carry on. You don't. They took me off the line for a good while. There were the official processes, there always are when force gets used. Every second of it gets examined as it should. I came through those fine. I'd done the job exactly as the job is meant to be done. Nobody had a hard word. But the other thing, the inside thing, took longer. The shaking came back for weeks at odd moments. I'd be fine, and then I'd be in a supermarket queue and the half stride would land on me again, the narrowness of it, and I'd have to go and sit in the car. They were good about it, the service, better than people would think. They know now that you don't see a thing like that and walk it off, and there was help, and I took it, and I'm glad I did. A younger me would have white-knuckled it and called that strength. It isn't. Taking the help is the strength. I learned that late at 50-odd, on the far side of a half-second. What pulled me back in the end, more than any of the help, was the little girl. Because she wasn't done with me. I'd assumed, the way you do, that she'd been swept inside and away and out of my life forever, the way they all are, that I'd been a wall to her for 1/2 second and then gone, a man she'd never think of again, and rightly, because who'd want to remember the worst half-second of their childhood? But a 6-year-old's mind doesn't work the way you'd expect, and weeks later, when I was still off the line, still shaking in supermarket queues, still trying to find my way back from the half-stride, word reached me that the little princess had been asking apparently more or less daily, asking after the man who got hurt protecting her, asking to see him, asking if he was all right, because in the way of small children, she'd worried all this time, not about herself, but about me. Whether the big guard who jumped in front of her was okay. And what she did, when they finally let her come and find me, is the last part of it. It's the part that put me back together. And that's where the second part has to end. Because I came out of that half-second a different man than I went in, shaken, humbled, carrying both the narrowness of it and the strange grief of the broken man I'd had to stop. I'd done the one thing my whole career was for, and instead of feeling like a hero, I felt like a man who'd glimpsed how thin the line really is, how much rests on half a stride, how the systems we trust have gaps a sick man can fall through onto a child. But there was a 6-year-old who'd come through it untouched, who was already in the resilient way of children, mostly fine, and who, it turned out, had spent those weeks worrying about me. And what she came to say, and the small thing she came to give me, is what turned the half-second from the thing that nearly broke me into the thing I'd build the rest of my life's pride on. The statue had moved, the child was safe, and now the child was coming back to take care of the statue. They brought her to see me on a gray afternoon a few weeks on, when I was still signed off and still not right. It was arranged carefully, these things are, a quiet room, not a public one. Her parents there, and a couple of the protection team hanging back by the wall, and me, in ordinary clothes, feeling strange and exposed without the uniform, like a snail out of its shell. I hadn't seen myself as anything but the wall that day. Out of the red, sitting in an armchair in my own jumper, I felt like nobody at all, a man who'd shaken in a supermarket queue that morning. And then the door opened, and the little girl came in. She stopped just inside it, and she looked at me properly, seriously, the way that solemn, watchful sort of child looks at you, and I braced, I'll admit, for fear, for her to flinch from me. Because the last time she'd seen my face it had been over the top of a man I was putting violently to the ground. The last association she had with me was the worst half-second of her small life, and I wouldn't have blamed her for never wanting to set eyes on me again. She didn't flinch. She crossed the room straight to my chair, this 6-year-old, and she stood in front of me and she said, "Are you better now?" I couldn't speak for a second. Are you better now? That's what she'd come to ask. Not thank you for saving me. Not anything about herself at all. She'd come, after weeks of asking daily, to find out whether the man who'd got hurt protecting her was all right. The whole thing from her side had been worry for me. While the grown-ups fretted over her, she'd been fretting over the guard. I got out. I'm getting better, sweetheart, yes. You jumped in front of me, she said, matter of fact, working it out aloud the way they do. The man was going to get me and you got in the way, so he got you instead. And then you were sad after, she frowned. Mummy said you were sad after because it was scary. It was a bit scary, I admitted. After, yes. She nodded, very seriously, as though this confirmed something she'd suspected. And then she climbed up, uninvited, the way small children do, just decided it and did it, onto the arm of my chair, and she leaned against me, this child I'd met for 1/2 second of violence, and she said, like it was the simplest fact in the world, "It's okay to be scared after. I was scared after too. We can be scared after together." And a grown man who'd held the line for 20 years, who'd kept his face stone through everything the public could throw at him, who'd put a man on the ground without a flicker. That grown man sat in an armchair and cried, finally, properly, with a 6-year-old's hand patting his shoulder, telling him it was okay to be scared. She'd brought me something, too. She had it clutched in her other hand the whole time, and once the crying had settled and I'd got myself back, she held it out to me. A medal. Not a real one, a child's one. She'd made it. A circle of gold card on a ribbon with a wobbly crayon picture on it that I worked out after a moment was meant to be a guard. A big red figure with a black scribble for a hat. And under it, in careful, enormous letters, helped with the spelling, BRAVEST. "I made you a medal," she said, "because you were the bravest. And the real people give medals for being brave, but I didn't think they'd let me into the medal cupboard, so I made one." She considered. "It's not a real one." "It's the realest one I've ever had," I said, "and I meant it, and I mean it still. I have it framed, of course I do. The crayon medal that says BRAVEST, made by a 6-year-old who'd come to check that her guard was okay. It hangs where I see it every day, next to nothing, because nothing else I own belongs anywhere near it. That was the thing that turned me back into a person. Not the official processes saying I'd done right. Not even the counseling, good as it was. It was a child climbing onto the arm of my chair and saying we can be scared after together. Because the thing that had been eating me, underneath the shaking, was a kind of shame I couldn't name, that I'd done the heroic thing and felt not heroic but terrified, broken, small. That the wall had crumbled the moment the danger passed. I'd thought that meant something was wrong with me. That a real guard wouldn't shake in a supermarket. And a 6-year-old fixed it in one sentence. It's okay to be scared after. She wasn't scared during either. None of us are. There's no room. We're scared after, all of us. The bravest people you'll ever meet are scared after. The fear is the receipt the body hands you for the courage it spent. The shaking isn't the failure of the wall. It's the cost of the wall paid late, and there's no shame in the cost. She knew that at 6. It took me 50-odd years and a half second to learn it, and she taught it to me from the arm of an armchair, patting my shoulder. I went back to the line in time. I'm still here, near enough, winding down now, near the end of it all. And I stand my post, and I'm a statue again, and the tourists walk past and point and pose and try to make me crack, and they see exactly what they've always seen. A costume, a photo, a bit of old pageantry, a man trained out of being a man. They've no idea. They never do. They don't know that the still red figure they're photographing once spent a half second being the only thing between a child and the worst, and has shaken in supermarket queues and keeps a crayon medal on his wall that says BRAVEST. They look at the stillness and they think it's emptiness. It isn't. It never was. The stillness is just the waiting. 20 years I stood still, and people would ask, sometimes, doesn't it drive you mad, the nothing, the standing, the pointlessness of it? And for years I didn't have a good answer. I'd say it's the job and leave it there. I have an answer now. The standing isn't pointless. The standing is the whole point. Every still, cold, boring hour of it is a man holding himself ready for a half second that will almost certainly never come, and being willing to hold ready anyway, for years, for decades, for a half second that might not arrive in a whole career, on the chance that one bright morning it does. That's not nothing. That's the opposite of nothing. That's a man saying, with 20 years of his life, if it ever comes, and it's me who's closest, I'll be the wall. I'll have been ready the whole time. Most of us never get the half second. We stand our whole careers and it never comes, and we retire having only ever been scenery, and that's the best outcome there is. It means nothing ever went wrong on our watch. I got mine. One in 20 years. And the geometry put me in the right place, and the 20 years had made me ready, and a child got to grow up. I'd stand the whole 20 years again for that half second. Every cold hour of it, without a moment's hesitation. She still comes sometimes. Did I say? She's older now, getting tall, getting to that age where waving at a guard isn't cool anymore. But she still finds me in the line, still picks me out of the identical men in the identical hats, and she still does a thing only she and I understand. She touches her own shoulder once where she patted mine that day in the armchair. Are you better? We can be scared together. And I break the post just for her, just my eyes, the smallest nod. I'm better. Thank you for the medal. Thank you for coming back for the statue. People think the guard protects the child. And he does. That's the job, and I did it in the 1/2 second it was ever asked of me. But nobody tells you the other half. That's sometimes after, when the wall has crumbled and the man is shaking and the fear has come flooding in late. It's the child who comes back and protects the guard. She got to grow up because I was the wall. I got to put myself back together because she made me a medal. That's the whole of it, really. We saved each other. It just took us a 1/2 second and a crayon and a few weeks in between.